Hello everyone, a quick little couple of minutes of a tutorial here just to show you how I mix my paints and how I get that consistency on my canvas. A lot of people are asking about my consistency and that they can't get the consistency that I have. So I'm just going to show you very quickly here my setup and how I mix my turpentine and how I mix my paints as well. Okay, just a little close up of all that. So let's have a look. Now, I have a little bit of canvas here, a small bit of canvas. This is now raw canvas, okay? This is just a cheap canvas board that I bought, okay? And this for me now is very, very rough, okay? Can you hear that? Really, really, really rough. And I don't like that. So, what I tend to do is when I buy a canvas like this, I take a piece of sandpaper like that, alright? Now this is a very fine grit sandpaper, okay? Now, I give it a light sand like this, alright? Just very lightly to take the top off of that. Then I give it a coat of my primer. Now, I don't have my primer with me here, it's just a watery mix of a white undercoat paint, okay? A water-based paint. The type that you might use for painting doors and stuff like that and skirting boards, it's a water-based undercoat, okay? That's all it is. I give it a coat of that, and when it's finished, it's nice and smooth. Now I don't have one which is already done, okay? But I'm just going to show you on this now one of the things that you can do to help with your paint moving around nicely on the canvas. Now I have here a cup of coffee, which is the most important thing of all. You have to have a cup of coffee. Now, linseed oil, okay? You can see it here. This now is just regular linseed oil which I bought in my art store, okay? And what I have here is a little bottle of turpentine, look. Regular turpentine. You buy that in any hardware store, very, very common. So what I do is I take some linseed oil. Now I have about this much turpentine in here, okay? It's just a little bit, it's not a lot, alright? It's to about there. All I do is, there's no precise measurement, I take a little bit of linseed oil and I pop some of that in, okay? A good little bit of it there, right? Now, there we go. Give it a mix. And that's it. That then is my medium for painting, okay? It's a kind of a slightly yellowy colour. Now, a little bit of that in there, and that's my medium. Now what you can do as well is, let me just pan back here a little bit. Now I have a bit of tissue here, you can take a little bit of tissue, alright? Let me just try and break off a little bit of this tissue. Okay, small bit of tissue, or even a cloth, right? All you do is, I just dip this in here, like that, okay? Dip it in, so it's wet. And go over your canvas very quickly with this then. Just give your canvas one coat. Now I'm going to do the top half and leave the bottom half. And what I'm going to do then is paint on the bottom half and paint on the top half, and we'll see the difference. Now you don't have to soak this, alright? And this will dry in a little bit, okay? It's not going to stay very wet like a liquid white or a liquid or anything like that, or a liquid clear, as you will see in Bob Ross movie films, tutorials. It's not like any of those. This is just to wet the canvas, and it's already starting to dry in. Now let's take a brush and let's put some paint on our palette. Now let me think now what will I do here. I think I'll try some burnt umber, okay? Now, let me put some burnt umber. I have burnt umber here. Now, these are my paints as well, by the way. A lot of people are asking about my paints, okay? Georgian Roni, or a Doyle or Roni, and they're called Georgian oil colour for artists. That's what I use. I have that type, and I have this type, Winton, okay? They're both very similar. Now, this is a nice thick colour, you see? And what else will we put out? Let's try let's try a little white. Put a little bit of white up there. And let's put a little Naples yellow. Look, regular Naples yellow. Alright, screw that off if I can. I'll have to, there we go. Now, screw that off there. Let's put a little bit of that up there. Okay, now let's take some paint on its own. You see, what I normally do is I dip my brush into my turpentine like this, just very quickly. Just take off some of it, okay? So it's just damp. It's a damp brush. Let's take a little Naples yellow, okay, on its own. And let's put this, you know what, now let's take a bit of burnt umber so that you can see it moving properly, okay? Now there it is moving because the linseed oil underneath is helping it flow, okay? Do you understand? Let's take a bit of white and a bit of brown, okay? Just take paint on its own. So you can see now how that's moving nicely around on the canvas, you see? Now let's try this on the bottom half and see if there's any difference. Let's take some burnt umber and some Naples yellow again. Let's go down here. Now you see how that's not going as far, you see? Because the canvas is very dry. Now that's probably what's happening to you out there as well. I have pure paint on its own, look, and it doesn't go very far. But if I do the same thing and go to the top, okay, the very same, it just goes much further. And that little bit of linseed oil, even though it's dry, it's actually dry into the canvas. Okay, it's not wet at all, it's completely dry. But when you put your thinners and paint on the canvas, it kind of unlocks the linseed oil that's in there already, and it just helps it flow. You can see the difference, there's a huge difference. Now, you can, if you take paint on its own, okay, let's take a bit of Naples yellow, and let's take some burnt umber, okay? Now let's try this on its own down here. Now that's not bad, okay? The canvas is still a bit dry, but it's not moving as good as I want it to move. Let's take a tiny, tiny bit of thinners in this. The tiniest little bit, right? I'm just going to take the tiniest bit with the corner of the brush, just a tiny bit. Let's take some burnt umber, some Naples yellow, okay? There's a big difference there already. So that's what I do. It's just little tiny amount of thinners make a big difference, you know? Let me try that again. So I know you're probably thinking, well, my paints are very thick, and mine are very thick as well, look, when they come out. But it's just a case of having the right amount of thinners. You can see the way that's almost kind of running down. It's quite wet, and I do make my mixes quite wet, okay? So don't just put loads of paint on. You can put loads of paint on if there's already paint on your canvas, right? You see? And then soften it through. So let's take a bit of white and let's soften that through there. You see? It's all about, I suppose, getting the right amount of turpentine on your brush. You know what I mean? A little bit goes a long way. And lean down hard on your brush. Use all of your brush, okay? Don't be afraid to really push down into the canvas. So that's what I would say. Put a little bit of linseed oil on your canvas first. Just rub a little piece on, and so you can see the difference now. They're two very different types of finishes, aren't they? You know. So let me just take a bit of white down, that bit of Naples yellow, and go down here and try and soften this through. And this is already starting to dry. It's kind of soaking into the canvas a lot. See what I mean? See, it's already very difficult now for me to cover this. But by just rubbing that linseed oil on your canvas, it makes a big difference. So you don't even have to prime your canvas, you can just rub linseed oil over your canvas with cloth. Okay? That will help big time. It'll make a huge difference. Okay, so just try it and see what you think. Now this canvas, as I said before, it's not primed, so I would give it a primer. These cheaper canvases have very chalky primers on them, right? Now I have one here. This is an Elements canvas, 14 by 10, and it's just very, very very dry. It's very, very, very dry to touch. So what I'll do is I'll give this a light rub of sandpaper. Even just sandpaper on its own, a very fine sandpaper. Give it a rub and give it a coat of linseed oil and thinners before you start painting. And you can also use, if you like, you can also use just linseed on its own, on a cloth. Just put it on, rub it on with a bit of a cloth, okay, before you start painting. And after a couple of minutes then start painting. It will make a big difference, I promise. It just takes that dryness and that kind of soakage out of the canvas. Because some of these cheaper canvases, they're kind of primed with very cheap primers, especially the very thin boards, so they're not great for painting directly on. So just bear that in mind, okay? That's just something, a little something to help you along. Is there anything else now you need to know that while I'm here? Did I mention have a cup of coffee? Have a cup of coffee next to you, that's very important. Coffee is very important. I have brushes. I got a new delivery of brushes, stubby brushes. If you want them, there's a link on there's a link under the descriptions, my Etsy page. You can go there to get them, or you can just email me directly if you're interested. That's kind of it, really. Just add plenty of thinners to your paint when you're painting. Don't make it watery. Just what I would say is dip the corner of the brush into your thinners, dab it on a tissue quickly just once to take off the excess, and then mix a bit of paint into it. Then add more thinners if it's still very thick. I wouldn't use any mediums like liquids, all those kind of mediums for thinning paint. I prefer just to stick to turpentine and linseed oil. Okay, you can of course just use linseed oil on its own if you like, but a little bit of turpentine just helps. It kind of breaks down the paint that much quicker, you know. So try it, let me know how you get on. Do prime your canvases if you can't afford an expensive canvas. Just give it a quick primer of just a very watery white undercoat paint, okay. Anything that's water based will do fine, anything at all. And then just give it a coat of linseed oil and turpentine with the cloth afterwards before you paint. That should make a huge difference, okay? So go on, try it, let me know what you think. I hope you're enjoying all the tutorials, so I will see you very soon with another tutorial. That water droplet going down and making rings in the water, something I'm going to do that next week. I'll see you very soon. Any questions, just ask me, alright? Email me at stephencomma12@gmail.com. God bless and happy painting.